South Armagh has a certain ring to it, and it's known to anybody in the army being a difficult area, one which was known to be, first of all, adjacent to the Republic, the border with the Republic. Secondly, an area in which the IRA had quite a grip.
The IRA and South Armagh were masters of the radio-controlled bomb. Using TV repair shops throughout Ireland as cover, they had developed and extended the range of their radio-controlled detonators. This enhanced technology was vital to the IRA's plans for the two attacks on Mountbatten and the Paras.
By 76, 77, 78, it was obvious that they had developed the process to a degree of sophistication that actually probably made them to the fore in the world of terrorism, and it was frightening.
These radio-controlled devices were so dangerous that the army set up a special weapons intelligence unit to fight back.
From the mid-1970s onwards, the developments in radio-controlled devices were very problematic for the government and for the armed forces. This was particularly because the countermeasures that were required were quite expensive to develop.
How's it going?
Close it behind you.
And we were always in the dark. We were always one step behind the provisional IRA.
Did you get those new tone coders?
They're not setting right. They're more complicated than before. But it'll stop the Brits from jamming it.
We generally discovered innovations, improvements in systems only when a device had exploded or a device in fact had been recovered.
The security forces were building a network of radio stations to try to find and then jam the signals that set the bombs off. But in 1979, they could not detect them all. At Mullaghmore and Warren Point, the bomb makers would have the edge.
We had no idea who it was and where they were. And it was an impossible position to be in because we had so little information to go on.
Less than 24 hours before the Warren Point ambush, the IRA unit from South Armagh armed their milk-churn bombs. The detonating cords were attached to a radio receiver, a McGregor device operating on 27 megahertz. The 500-pound bomb was then hidden on a trailer, surrounded by bales of hay, and taken to the ambush point.
The trailer was put in position on Sunday evening. A number of witnesses saw the trailer in place. No one really saw it being put into position, and it sat there overnight.
The second 800-pound bomb was placed by the nearby gatehouse. The trap was now set. At the same time, the IRA's unit targeting Mountbatten waited for nightfall. The Earl and his family were up at the castle. That Sunday evening they were in good spirits. Mountbatten himself had no illusions that, aged 79, he faced the end of his life. He'd even recently taken part in his obituary for the BBC.
But now I've come to the end of my useful life, and there's no point in remaining alive forever, merely becoming a burden to people. So I don't mind now, really, when it comes, as long as it's a reasonably peaceful and satisfying sort of death.
As darkness fell, while Mountbatten was up at the castle, two IRA men were down at the harbour, one keeping a lookout, while the other planted the device, a 50-pound radio-controlled gelignite bomb. Although the cabin of the 29-foot boat was locked, the engine compartments at the back of the boat were open. It was here that the bomb was placed. While the IRA were placing the bomb, Mountbatten's bodyguards were all at the castle, looking after the man. not his boat.
No problem getting onto the boat at all. Down a small ladder across my boat, she was moored on the outside, and you could have lifted the engine hatch cover. You could have opened the battery box. Any part of that area was absolutely no problem at all.
By dawn on Bank Holiday Monday, August the 27th, the IRA radio-controlled bombs, one at Mullagh Moor, two at Warren Point, were primed and in place. The morning of the 27th was fine and clear. At 9:15, Lord Mountbatten came out of Classybourne to speak with his bodyguard.
He approached me anyhow when we had a brief conversation, and he had just had breakfast and that. And he told me that he and his party would be going out later on that morning on Shadow 5 to visit the lobster pots and that, and do a wee bit of sailing.
That year, Mountbatten employed a 15-year-old boy to look after his boat, Paul Maxwell.
Rodney Lomax approached me one day and he said that the Mountbattens were looking for somebody to look after the boat, and he asked me if Paul would be interested, and I said yes, I'm sure he would.
They wanted somebody to pump it out, put the cushions out in the morning, prepare the fishing tackle, and then tidy the boat up at night and remoor it and wash it down. And Paul was loving it.
He was elated, really, to have a chance to go out in the boat and look after it.
At 11:15, Mountbatten and his party boarded Shadow 5. 15 minutes later, the boat, with Mountbatten at the wheel, slipped its moorings and headed into the bay. There were 6 other people aboard, including 3 children, 2 of Mountbatten's grandchildren, Nicholas and Timothy Knatchbull, and Paul Maxwell.
After I'd had my breakfast, I went down to the village to buy a paper, and I saw him in the boat on the other side of the harbour, and I waved at him and he waved back.
Mountbatten's police bodyguard was keeping a lookout from the shore.
They turned round, set sail very slowly out of the harbour. I got into the trocar and kept the movements of Shadow 5 and his party under observation.
Also watching was the IRA's button man, armed with a radio-controlled detonator, to set off the bomb hidden on the boat.
In about 5 minutes, they came to a little inlet where the lobster pots were.
At that precise moment, the button man pressed the trigger that detonated the bomb.
Flashes of green, red, blue, and then suddenly a massive mushroom-shaped cloud of smoke. I remember saying, oh my God, no, this can't be happening. This hasn't happened.
I was sitting out at the back of the cottage reading the paper when I heard the explosion, and I seemed to know what it was. And I got into the car and drove down to the headland, to where I thought the boat would be approximately by that time, because I knew he'd just gone out after I had left, and I knew he would be probably opposite the headland at that point in the boat.
This is BBC Radio News. Lord Mountbatten of Burma has been killed by an explosion on his yacht off the west coast of the Irish Republic.
There's a stunned silence about this small, picturesque village which sprawls along the side of a hill.
Local people say the yacht was about 100 yards from the shore when there was a massive explosion, throwing everyone on board into the sea.
15-year-old Paul Maxwell was standing on top of the bomb when it went off. Mountbatten was blown unconscious into the water. He drowned. 14-year-old Nicholas Knatchbull was killed by the blast, and his grandmother, Lady Brabourne, died later of her injuries.
When we arrived there, they were lifting the last of the people who had been injured and people who had been killed on board boats that were in the vicinity at the particular time of the explosion.
What was the state of Lord Mountbatten's boat?
Well, it was non-existent. It was just in very small pieces. It's just blown to small bits.
I knew everybody on board the boats knew what they looked like, so I was able to identify the remains as they were brought ashore, and Paul was one of the first casualties actually taken on shore, and I recognised that straight away.
You know, the first thing that occurs to you, is he really dead? And I felt his body. It was still warm, so I'm sorry. It's very difficult to talk about it. But his body was still warm, and I thought for a while he might be still alive, but he clearly wasn't. But you know the way you hope these things.
The royal family was informed at once. The Prince of Wales had been abroad. He rushed back to Britain.
I think Mountbatten's death came as a horrifying shock to the Prince of Wales, because he'd built up this very special relationship. He had said only a few months before in a letter how I cannot think how I should ever manage if you were to be unkind enough to die. And now suddenly it had happened.
Shock and a sense of humiliation lay over this place today, for just here died perhaps the most distinguished and most honoured British victim in the history of the Irish Troubles. The task of this...
This was the most devastating bomb in the Republic for over 50 years. News of the outrage quickly spread through the army in Northern Ireland.
And of course it went round like wildfire. Huge sense of shock and anger at the bravado which had been displayed and the nature of the casualties.
But the horror was not over yet. Early in the afternoon that same Bank Holiday Monday, 2 IRA men took up position overlooking the Warren Point bombs, waiting to detonate them the moment an army convoy passed. At 3 o'clock, 3 hours after the Mountbatten bomb, A Troop, 2nd Parachute Battalion, left their base at Ballykinler, en route for Newry. They were about to start their tour of duty, patrolling the bandit country of South Armagh. There were 30 men in the convoy. Paul Burns was one of them. It was his first patrol.
We were all sort of apprehensive anyway, and excited about being able to go and do what we've been trained for.
Crack was good. The weather was fantastic. Bank holiday. Messing about with the vehicles behind us, you know, making faces, etc. Just everything was tickety-boo.
As the convoy came along the dual carriageway, it approached the hay trailer parked in the lay-by. At 4:40 p.m, the 2 IRA men waiting on the south side of the river spotted the convoy approaching. £500 of explosive ripped into the side of the rear truck.
It's like going over, bumping over in the car when you were a kid and you get butterflies in your stomach. No big bang, no pain, no like nothing like that. A flash, a rumble, sensation of flying, and then you're there. It's happened.
The rear truck in the convoy had caught the full blast of the explosion. It was blown right across onto the far side of the carriageway. Of the 9 soldiers inside, only 2 survived.
I was left-hand side of my body caught it. My hand was blown in 2 and lost bits at the end of my fingers. Big steel tailgate to the lorry caught my legs and smashed my right foot to bits. Literally.
Looked to the right, and in doing so, noticed my legs were burning. Carried on looking to the right, still couldn't see anybody. Looked about. There was carnage everywhere.
Peter Malloy, a press photographer, was driving past when the bomb went off.
I always carried a camera in the car, and it was always preset. All I had to do was lift it and shoot. as I was driving down, I just grabbed it and I just stopped the car and got out, and I could see nothing, only smoke. But the policeman, and I never forget him, he was hysterical. Possibly good reason to be at that time, in shock, and he was screaming. I can remember every word he said. Don't go in there, they're all dead, get away, and then he run past me.
Off-duty fireman Eamon McGee also arrived quickly.
The scene would be pretty chaotic. I could see then bodies. There's smoke, under the smoke I could see bodies. I could hear a couple of cracks going off. Didn't know whether they were shooting, or at that time you wouldn't have known whether there were ammunition going off in the fire or it would have been actual shooting.
With ammunition exploding in the burning vehicles, the surviving troops thought they had come under fire from the Irish side of the border.
There was pandemonium at that stage. There was straw, there was debris still falling, and a lot of shooting.
I heard somebody shouting, "There's the bastard." I looked up and I could see two people on the jetty on the far side, on the Republic side. Then loads of shooting come in. You could actually see the leaves on the trees. There's a wood over there, and you could see the leaves bouncing. There was a hell of a lot of gunfire went in. It was actually scary at that stage.
Michael Hudson, an English boy out fishing, was killed by the Paras firing. Within 15 minutes, reinforcements arrived by helicopter and also by jeep from the local Warren Point garrison. A command post was set up by the nearby gatehouse, just as the IRA had predicted.
There was one voice that stood out above everyone else, a very distinctive officer-type classical English voice, booming voice, shouting, "Take hard cover, fall back." Immediately the soldiers went back towards the gate lodge of Norrawater Castle.
The Paras and their rescuers headed straight for the place where the second, even larger bomb was waiting. They had fallen into the trap that was set for them. The IRA men, hidden across the other side of the loch in the Republic, now detonated the second device, 20 minutes after the first.
There seems to be like a calm, and like you feel like a hush, like a wind. You don't hear the bang right away. You see the debris, and then you hear it's ear piercing, you know. I knew what it was, and I was quite close to the truck, so I just rolled under it. I just fell down and rolled onto the truck.
I had got down in a prone position, belly down, and was looking up, and the next thing I was lifted completely off the ground and thrown back 10, 15 feet by what I now know was a blast. And as I was going back, I clicked the shutter, and then I saw the smoke going up, and I saw vehicles and people getting blown from my right to the left across the road. And it happened so quick. It was instantaneous.